Somewhere beyond the crowded faces of hipsters and Leica fanboys awaits a camera that most are too afraid to accept. A feat of engineering from 2001. Selling for 80% less than a Leica M. A rangefinder too free to be confined by any particular set of frame lines. What lens you desire is truly up to you. The only rangefinder camera with a built-in variable diopter. With an astounding 1.5 times magnification, focusing with a higher accuracy than your average Leica M. It's the only rangefinder with the light meter readout on the outside, allowing the street photographer to truly stay discreet. Compact and lightweight, weighing 190 grams less than the Leica M6. This is the Voigtlander Bessa T. Strange but powerful.
So you're probably wondering, like, what is this guy doing just collecting cameras? But I actually got this way before I won the M3. I got this because, I don't know, has it been like 2 months now? I sold my Leica M6. And the reason why I sold my M6 is because I didn't really need that expensive of a film camera. Nobody's hiring me to shoot film. But what people do hire me to do is shoot video. I saw an opportunity to sell my Leica M6. I got $3,000 for it, and I put that money towards a camera that started making me money within a couple days. And so that was why I put out the crazy video that I did about the Sony FX6. I think I sold my Komodo in March or April of this year. The last time anyone requested the red Komodo on a job was in 2022. It was an HBO Max show. I remember, because that was kind of a big show for me. I was the A-cam operator. It's a HBO Max show called High Science. That was the last time I was able to get the Komodo on a job. And from that point in 2022 up until, now, no joke, I would say about 90% of the jobs I've been on were Sonys. This year I said, you know what, I'm just gonna get the FX6. And yeah, maybe I should have made that jump a lot sooner, but it's never too late, right? So anyways, that's why I sold the M6. But then I was sitting there, I had no film camera, but I had a fridge full of Cine still. And honestly, I was feeling a lot of anxiety that I sold the M6. I felt like, oh, why did I do that? When I first got it, I had a full overhaul done on it over at Steve's Camera. I had them put the MP viewfinder in it. I was feeling stressed out, like, oh man, I thought I was gonna pass that off to my nephews or my nieces and nephews when I die, and then they can pass it down to their children. I was thinking all this stuff like, oh, you know how we do. So then I just started researching like really nice, affordable rangefinder analog cameras. Because when it comes to photography, it has to be a rangefinder, right? And I did a whole video on this 2 years ago because my first rangefinder camera was the Leica M8. Ever since messing with the M8, I don't want to use any other type of camera other than a rangefinder when it comes to photography. I just don't. So that kind of narrows down the analog search a little bit, but what narrows it down even more is I wanted it to be a Leica M mount because I still own the M10. And I wanted to be able to use the same lenses that I use on my M10. And so that really narrows it down, right? So that's how I came across the Voigtlander Bessa T. When I started using this camera about a month ago, it dawned on me like, wow, I actually enjoy this camera so much that I no longer felt bad about selling my M6. Well, certainly that $3,000 made you feel good too, right? Now, I did recently take this out this past weekend. They're having like a little art walk event here in the neighborhood. It's been a long time since I've used a 28mm for street, and boy, am I horrible at it now. Now, I'm really bummed out. I used to use 28 all the time, and I really got away from it. Around the same time I got the M6, I got the 35 Summicron. I just did a video on that, the Cobb King of Bokeh one, the version 4, and because I felt that was the perfect combo, that's just what I always used, and that just lived on that camera. And I stopped using the 28 for street. And this past weekend, I'm horrible at it now. So we don't have really good photos to look at, which is a bummer. When I went out this weekend and took a bunch of shitty pictures, I had 2 rolls of film with me. I found this really old roll of Fujifilm Superior 400. Like, it had to have been 10 years old at least. And that was my first mistake. I was like, oh, this will be interesting. I'm gonna take this. And then I took this brand new experimental roll of Lomochrome Metropolis made by Lomography. It's like a weird, it's claimed to have a flexible ASA of 100 to 400, but I mean, technically, isn't any roll of film, can't any film be a flexible ASA? Anyways, I lost the entire roll of Fujifilm because the lab told me that it all came back blank, which was a really big bummer. But after I saw the photos from the Lomochrome roll, I thought, well, they probably all sucked anyways. So let's get into this. The number one quirky thing about this camera that I think most people try to avoid it is because it doesn't have a viewfinder, right? You have to use external viewfinders with this guy. But that, funny enough, was the main thing that attracted me to this camera because I already own 6 of these viewfinders. I have viewfinders that cover focal lengths from a 15 mil all the way up to 135 mil. So I'm golden on viewfinders because if you don't own these, I understand, you know, these are kind of costly, especially if you get the good ones. Ricoh and Voigtlander make the best, somewhat affordable ones. You're still going to spend probably around $75 to $100 for one. They're not cheap, right? So I understand the argument, like why to avoid this camera. But here's my thing, man. I love using the external viewfinders. I do it on all my Leica cameras. I just love it. They're bigger, they're brighter, they're clearer. They're always a damn near 1-to-1. They don't wash out in a backlit situation, and you can still see them in ultra low light situations. I just prefer it. So if you have never used an external viewfinder with your rangefinders, I encourage you to try it, right? I encourage you to try it and let me know in the comments how that works out for you because I've been using them for 2 years and I much prefer it. So knowing that this camera requires those, I thought, well, I gotta check this camera out. And what really blew me away is the rangefinder design itself. You know, my M6 only had a 0.72 magnification. The M3 that I just won is a 0.92, maybe a 0.94. Anyways, the average Leica M is a 0.72. That's like the average normal one. Obviously, you can get wider ones or a little bit tighter. They do make 0.85 ones. The point of all that is this magnification of this focusing window is a 1.5 times magnification. So right there, that's over double what your average M6 is going to be. You know, the fact that there's no actual viewfinder with frame lines, you still have a rangefinder window. So this is the actual rangefinder window. And then on this side is like the focusing window, right? So when you look in here, the entire peephole is the rangefinder patch. And that's really wild too, because I always struggled to focus on the M6 because the rangefinder patch is so tiny in those cameras. Where this now, it's you know, I don't have to struggle at all to see this because the entire peephole is the rangefinder patch. Now, to top it all off, it has a built-in diopter, a +2, -2 diopter. And I feel like this is the biggest kind of misconception about this camera that I see all over online is that people say, oh, this camera is really only good for people that shoot long lenses or shoot really fast lenses. But I don't agree with that. I think anyone that's wanting accurate focus, regardless of how fast your lens is or how long and tight it is, if you just want accurate focusing, this is the camera to use, in my opinion, because of that built diopter, because of that really strong magnification, and because the rangefinder patch is so big. It doesn't matter if I'm shooting on this 28mm, a 21mm, or a 90mm, right? If you want accurate focusing. Now, also, I think another misconception is people hear the word diopter and we automatically think like, oh, that's just for people that wear glasses. But that's also not true. Think about, you know, if you know anything about rifles or using scopes on a gun, anybody that is a marksman will understand and appreciate a diopter. You can fine-tune it for your eyeball. You can fine-tune it for something that you're focusing on really close or really far away. And when you're talking about rangefinders, that is a huge tool to have. That's why if you wanted to buy one for your Leica M and it's made by Leica, I've seen some of those sell for $600 for the big external diopters. It's pretty wild, and you certainly are going to pay a premium for it to be a variable like this one, a +2, -2. So the fact that you have these amazing features on here for the actual design of the rangefinder itself, I instantly forgot all about the M6 because I was always struggling to focus with the little tiny rangefinder patch on the M6.
Excuse me? Did you get a picture of us walking?
Yeah, I liked your shirt.
Can I see it by any chance?
Oh, it's film.
Oh,
Yeah.
so I can never get it, huh?
Oh yeah, you can get it.
No way. Oh, that's
here,
actually sick.
Yeah.
I heard it and I was like, oh,
Yeah, here, I'll give you a thing you can scan.
that's super cool. I heard it.
Yeah, this one's a little loud.
That's cool though. It'll be on your Instagram, like you're gonna post it.
Well,
If it comes out.
if not, I'll just send it to you.
Yeah,
Either way. Yeah.
I just followed you. My name's.
All right.
Oh, you're famous.
No.
My uncle follows you.
Oh, really?
Dale.
You're famous.
Is he a photographer?
He's a.
Oh yeah, Dale. Yeah,
Dale.
Yeah.
Dale Favreau.
Yeah, I think
He does like producing and stuff.
Yeah, we
like-
worked on something. Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah,
cool,
my
man.
uncle.
Awesome,
All right,
awesome.
Have a good day.
All right, you too.
Another kind of interesting thing about the design of the rangefinder is the fact that the rangefinder window, it's pretty far away from the shutter. And not only that, but the little window itself has a little protective bezel around it, and it's rigid. So you'll know if you cover it, you can feel it. And that's kind of always been my complaint about the M10, and the M6 is like this as well, and even the M8 was like this. On most Leica M rangefinders, they put the rangefinder window almost directly underneath the shutter button, where our finger kind of naturally goes if it's not on the shutter, right? And then not only that, but it's flush with the top plate. So a lot of times when I'm shooting on the M6 or the M10, I would be like, wow, why can't I focus? And it was because my finger would be directly over the rangefinder window, because the rangefinder window needs the light and then it sends it to the viewfinder, to the rangefinder patch. That's how it works. So the fact that, you'll always know if you're covering this one, that's kind of a bonus. And that's another reason why I actually really love the M3. All of the windows on the M3 have a nice little frame around them. And not only does that prevent you from covering the rangefinder window when you're trying to focus, but it also kind of keeps smudges off of your viewfinders and things, fingerprints and stuff like that. I just think it's a little bit more thought out design. You see there, the meter is on the outside. I absolutely love that because, well, I'm primarily a street shooter, right? So for me, being able to meter from the chest or the hip, that's a game changer. Because one of the biggest downsides with shooting with Leica cameras or any film cameras, even this one, I get stopped with it all the time.
What kind of camera do you have?
This is a Voigtlander Bessa T
Like point and
film.
shoot?
This is
Yeah,
a film. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, no, you can. It has a rangefinder, but you have to use viewfinders with it.
Cool.
Yeah.
What's that one?
This is mainly for video. I use
Nice.
little pocket Sony RX100. The RX100? Yeah, these are awesome.
They're sick.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
The downside with Leica cameras is you got to look inside the viewfinders to check the exposure. Most of the time when I'm on the street, I'm zone focusing, but I'm also zone metering, if there is such a thing. So I'm not really, relying on the meters too much, but when you need it, it's just nice to stay kind of discreet and not have to hold the camera up to your eye to check the exposure, right? Because as soon as you put it up to your eye, it's game over. You got this really cool looking camera, and people that aren't even interested in cameras are going to look at it and be like, wow, look at that camera. And then you hold it up to your eye and they're like, oh no, is he taking a picture of us? Right? Like, you know, it kind of like defeats the purpose. So I love that, having the meter on the outside. I think that's really smart. But again, it's smart for the type of shooting that I do. If you're doing portraits and stuff like that, you might not want your meter on the outside. It might be too annoying to have to keep going like that. So I do understand that as well. There is a slight difference in the way this camera meters versus a Leica camera. Leica cameras have what is called a partial selective spot meter, I believe is what it's called, right? And that's because the Leica M cameras, the analog ones, they have a cloth curtain. And because of the limitations of the cloth curtain, they're only able to put a little gray dot in there for the meter. Whereas cameras like this, the entire thing is gray. It's all gray in there. It's not a cloth curtain, unfortunately. It's a double metal curtain on this one, so it's very loud. I don't mind the sound of the shutter advance though. Let's compare that to the M3. It doesn't have a gray dot because there's no meter in this camera, but it still has this sexy cloth shutter. That's the advance. The advance on this one is a little bit louder than the Bessa T, funny enough, but I think that's because this was originally a double stroke and it was converted to a single stroke. But that is the cloth shutter of the M3. It sounds a little better, right? But in practicality, it's not like a nuisance. It's just pretty loud, you know. Plus you're getting that extra thwack at the end. You're not going to get that with a Leica. By the way, you'll have to excuse it if you saw the last time because this is in the middle of a rejuvenation. Okay, I'm getting the new skin, so I got it all cleaned up and getting ready for that. If you thought like, what the hell did happen to it? The vulcanite was chipping away immediately, so I just took it all off of there and getting it ready for the leather replacement that is on its way. You are going to get a much louder shutter with this. But the meter itself, this is a true center weighted average meter versus, you know, a partial spot selective out of a Leica camera. Because the way those are designed, the metering zone changes depending on whatever focal length you have on the camera. So if you have a 50 mil, your spot meter is going to be very, very small. Versus if you put a 28 mil on your Leica camera, now you have a much broader zone to meter in. So it's kind of a different way of metering. In practice, I find them pretty similar, to be honest with you. Another bonus of the Bessa is that it is a stop faster on the shutter. Film Leicas max out at 1,000th of a second. This one gives you a stop quicker. You can go up to 1/2000th of a second. And, you know, that's okay if you want to do some more kind of artsy shots. It'll certainly help you out if you do portraits. The main reason to like that is because you also get a stop faster for your maximum flash sync speed. So now you have 1/25th of a second for flash sync. Because you can use a flash with this camera. It does have a little PC sync port on the side. It does not have a hot shoe, all right, because you need the cold shoe for your viewfinder, but at least you can still do off-camera flash with the cable, and that's kind of cool because I actually prefer off-camera flash anyways. And you know, I had an M6 Classic and it was also a non-TTL flash. I didn't mind it, honestly, but I have a background in lighting because of my cinematography work, so I actually prefer to use a manual flash, but that's just me. And this thing is actually more compact and more lightweight than an M6, but a lot of that is because of the build quality of it. You know, you have a very cheap generic film back, which I'm just not a fan of. I don't know, I just don't like the generic way of how these things load. I actually do find the Leica cameras easier and quicker to load. I know a lot of people say like, oh, you could lose the bottom plate or something like that, but that's not true. You're not gonna lose it, you know. Plus these are plastic, right? This is all plastic. It just makes me a little nervous. I mean, it is cool that this Bessa has a film window on it, so you know if you have film in there. That happened to me a lot with the M6. I'd forget if I had film in it or not, whereas something like this, but the window also makes me nervous because it's like, well, is that going to lead to light leaks over time? I just don't know, you know. There's some downsides to that beautifully quiet cloth shutter in the Leica cameras, and that is that they tend to get pinholes burnt into them. So my M3 actually did have a patch on it. I didn't mention that in the video, but I noticed that afterwards. I'm like, oh, there's a patch on this. So someone definitely accidentally burnt a pinhole in that curtain. Happens all the time with Leica cameras. So, you know, because rangefinder users, we don't really use caps, right? Because you're never looking through the lens. So you could easily shoot some photos and have a bunch of blanks if you had the cap on your lens. So that's why most guys just leave caps at home if they are a rangefinder shooter, because of that. The downside to that is if you set this on a table like this, or you're driving in the car and you put it on the passenger seat like this, depending on how hot a day it is, and if your windows are down or something, the sun could be beaming through there and your lens could turn into a magnifying glass, and now you could be getting little holes burnt into your cloth shutter. That is a very kind of normal thing that happens. It's something that you do need to check when you're buying used Leica cameras. Whereas this one, double metal curtain, there's no holes getting burnt in this. So something I would need to add is the biggest complaint about these Bessa cameras, all of them, the Bessa Rs, the Bessa Ts, the L, that the design of where the lugs are is really, really bad. The lugs for the camera strap are on the front. But this is the reason too, if you can, get a little side grip. Mine came with this grip, but you'll notice it has a side lug, which actually counterbalances. So then you only need one on the front and one on the side, and then it hangs quite nice. Even with this heavy 28 mil, it's not, because if you didn't have that, imagine if they were both on the front, this would be leaning like this, right? That's what everybody complains about with these Bessa cameras. So as you see, this is a pretty beefy 28 mil, and I'm not having any issues with it wanting to lean into my belly. Also, I did put this leather on here because there's just some really, you can see it's just shitty textured plastic that these things come with. So I got this like leather, and I hate the color of it. I'm so bummed out. It's just not as brown as I was hoping it would be. It just looks like, ugh. But at least it's real leather. It's more textured than just, shitty plastic. This is the 101 edition, 101 for meaning 101 years to celebrate the Heliar lens design. So the 101 anniversary editions do have the Heliar lens design engraved on the back. Basically what Voigtlander did back in 2001 is they released 2000 anniversary edition cameras of the Bessa T and 2000 only, and there's only 500 of each colorway. So there's only 500 of these black reverse panda ones out there. If you care about that, I think that the anniversary editions are worth the little bit of extra money that they cost because they do have a higher build quality. The normal non-anniversary Bessa Ts are all plastic, and the anniversary editions have a chrome plated brass top and bottom plate, and the dials are an aluminum material. So it definitely is a better build quality. In my opinion, it's worth it if you can afford it to get the anniversary editions. It's not going to be that much more money. However, just be aware that both the normal ones and the anniversary ones, they all have the same inner magnesium alloy chassis. When you buy a Leica camera, right, you have to remember that that is a true investment. And I know I've had people on my channel say, some user was like, hey, I'm gonna say it one more time from the back, cameras are not an investment. And I'm like, that doesn't apply to Leica. Anything that I've ever sold with the word Leica on it, I've always made money on it, right? Like, or even did a trade. I mean, I always did awesome trades regarding Leicas, like Leica lenses, Leica cameras. You all should know by now, that actually is an investment. Why? Because two types of people own Leica products, okay? There's actual image makers, people that appreciate the art of photography, and then the other side of the camp that owns Leicas are people that simply just like having nice things, okay? That's a reality. And because of that, Leica will always hold the premium name. They are the Rolls-Royce of the camera world, and they just happen to have some of the most well-built cameras ever made, as well as they happen to just have some of the best lenses ever to hit the camera industry. Not some, I would say probably all of Leica lenses. I mean, even today, the Leica Rs are almost all gone because all the cinematographers like me have bought them up. I myself have gone through 2 different sets of Leica Rs trying to build the best with the best lenses. This is the real thing. Right? You don't see as many Leica Rs out there in the used market anymore. Sorry for all of our Leica R film shooters out there, right? But they are a true investment. I don't care what you think, you're not gonna win this argument with me. Leica is an investment, okay? But what you have to remember here, like any high quality investment, it will never be done. And what I mean by that is you go and you spend $3,000 to, God forbid, $6,000 on a Leica camera, okay? Then just know that that money pit is not done, okay? Because you're gonna have to continually get these things serviced, all right? Just like if you buy a Mercedes or a BMW, guess what? If you don't know, those automobiles have to be taken to a special shop. Not just any mechanic can be trusted with a Mercedes or a BMW, the same way that not any camera shop can be trusted with a Leica camera. And listen to me when I tell you, there was one Yahoo guy that nearly destroyed the meter in my M6 Classic because he just didn't know what he was doing. So you need to take these things to a certified lights technician, okay? What does that mean? Well, you're gonna pay a premium for that. You're gonna pay a little bit more. Why? Because they're certified technicians. You know, you just don't spend the money on an M6 and then think, yeah, that's over. Now I just have the camera. No more money. No, that's not true. Not to mention, you know, if you want to use good lenses, well then you're gonna even spend way more money, probably more money than you did on the camera body. But again, at least the lenses will have a longer longevity with you, hopefully, because you understand the reality that you marry your lenses and you date your camera bodies. However, I feel like with analog Leica cameras, I do feel like there is a little bit of marriage there. However, I did kick the M6 to the curb quite quickly after 8 months. You know, I had that M6 and I was able to sell it for a premium. $3,000. I sold that 1985 M6 Classic. It was not even a TTL. However, I did put the MP viewfinder in it, so that may have helped up, you know, increase the price a little bit. I'm just telling you, you know, these things are a true investment. That's a good thing and a bad thing. You just have to remember you're going to have to pay a little bit more to get it serviced, because I would tell you, like, I don't know how many people are going to want to service this Bessa T. Even, is it worth servicing? I mean, think about a CLA starts out around 250 bucks, right? I mean, I've seen these cameras sell for that cheap, right? So that's something to consider too. Like these are almost throwaway disposable cameras. It wasn't the same as what they say about Kia automobiles, right? Sorry for any Kia owners out there, but I've always heard that my whole life. Kia is the disposable vehicle. And so I'm just saying, you know, you got a Kia or a Nissan versus a Rolls-Royce, right? So you have to keep all that in mind. And when you have a Rolls-Royce and you're someone like me that's very hard on your gear, anytime I've done a video where people see me on the beach with my Leica or they see me in the desert with my Leica, there's always a few yahoos in the comments that are saying like, I would never take my Leica out there. And it's like, guys, these things used to be taken to war. You know, they are solid brass, you know, they are built a lot better than the majority of your other film cameras out there. But because of that, they need to be continually serviced. They need to be CLA'd, even if you're not using them. I've even heard on more than one occasion that if they just sit on a shelf, like you're a dentist or a lawyer, no offense, but if that's where they're sitting, they actually could have more damage to them done if you're not actually out there using them. I don't know. These are all things to consider, right? And the only reason why I say this is because, you know, if you're excited about analog and you're excited about film like the way I am, there wasn't always a video like this out there that existed, right? All we really see is really talented street photographers doing their thing. That gets you excited. You see what camera they're using, usually always the Leica M6, right? But there's not really a whole lot of people out there like me that are gonna shoot from the hip, just go and get these things, experiment with them, use them for 8 months, you know, and then just get real with myself in the reality situation so I can get real with all of you, right? That's kind of my unique thing that I do. So because of that, you know, I'm the one to tell you that, yes, I do think the M3 is the better camera than the M6. However, I do think that it's okay if you use a Bessa T, right? Because I don't think you're gonna miss anything that you wouldn't get out of your M6. In fact, I think you would have a more enjoyable experience. However, the price can go up with this if you don't have any of these viewfinders. And that I understand, right? Because these are not cheap, you know, for the good ones, and trust me, you're gonna wanna get the good ones. The cheap ones suck. Don't waste your money on it. It's gotta be Voigtlander, it's gotta be Ricoh, it's gotta be Zeiss. Yashica made some okay ones. Leica obviously make them, but they're very expensive. So that's something to consider too. Like, how many lenses are you really gonna use on this? But for me, it just made sense. I will admit that. I already had a gang of these viewfinders. I've always been using viewfinders. Maybe this camera would get you using these, and you can take these with you to any other rangefinder camera, and it's still going to be a much more enjoyable experience. In my opinion, these things are just like lenses, right? There's beautiful, high quality optics in it. If you get good ones, really well made, the Voigtlander ones are all metal. These are gonna last you just as long as your lenses do. And maybe when you sell your favorite focal length, you can get a little bit more money with it if you sell the viewfinder with it too. Because there's still people out there using these old Bessa Ts, the Bessa Ls, the original Leica 3s, which all need viewfinders unless they just love shooting with a 50mm. So keep all of that in mind. You know, this is also a pretty decent investment in the same way that your lenses are an investment. But I get it, it could add up quickly if you're like someone that just needs like 10 lenses. I'm more of the philosophy that I really only need 3 lenses. That's the reality of it. I really don't think anyone needs more than 3 lenses. 3 lenses really cover all your bases if you know how to build a lens set correctly, and you could save a lot of money like that too, but maybe in the future we'll do a video on that. Anyways, that's the video there on why I really think this is the best alternative to the Leica M6. I think this is the best entry-level rangefinder. I'm not the first one to say that, but I think I am the first one to really drive home the benefits of this Bessa T, right? Not a lot of people driving home the reality of how awesome this thing is to focus and use on street. Okay, so that's gonna do it. Loud shutter slap there, but we don't care. Thank you all for watching. If you are new here, you know, show some love. Use my links. It's the best way to support the channel at no extra cost. And yeah, I guess that's a wrap.
Thank you.
Doesn't matter who we are. What matters is our plan. No one cared who I was till I put on the mask.